Good morning. It is my pleasure this morning on behalf of the Agricultural Cluster of the CEO Forum to discuss with you what we see as practical solutions in answer to the question that was presented to us by the CEO Forum. The great team of individuals within this cluster have included Ocitti1 Robert Nsibirwa, who is an economist and who is also the Minister of Finance in the Buganda government, Mr. Robert Kabushenga, the CEO of New Vision, Mr. Francis Kamleger, Senior Country Partner for PwC, Ms. Patricia Ojangole, CEO, Uganda Development Bank, Mr. Patrick Birungi, Director, Development Planning, National Planning Authority, Mrs. Charity Kiemba, Legal and Corporate Relations Director, Uganda Breweries, Mr. Moses Adriko of Max Advocate, Mr. Juma Kasami of DFCU, Mr. Pius Wakabi from the Ministry of Agriculture, and Adam Mugume from Bank of Uganda. It is my hope that this presentation will drive an understanding to the solution being proposed and the reasons for the approach adopted, and drive agreement to our approach to the question and the solutions proposed as practical and that can be immediately implemented. Before we go into the question, I would like to give you some context so you can understand what guided our thinking. Vision 2040 is summed up as the socio-economic transformation of Uganda to be achieved by strengthening the fundamentals of the economy to harness the opportunities that exist. Vision 2040 identifies the opportunities as oil and gas, tourism, minerals, ICT business, abundant labor force, geographical location, trade, water resources, industrialization, and agriculture. It goes further to identify the fundamentals to include infrastructure for energy, transport, water, oil and gas, ICT, science, technology, engineering, and innovation, land, urban development, human resource, peace, security, and defense. Just taking a look at the way that this is framed, each of us must start reframing our own view on agriculture. And here are two key factors that must shape our view. First, we believe that agriculture is not just an opportunity, but a fundamental as well, especially if you consider that over 70% of the Ugandan population derives its sustenance from agriculture, and that for many a Ugandan, when you speak of retirement or an income-driving activity, 7 out of 10 will tell you about a business related to agriculture. So fixing agriculture will open up the opportunities in trade, industrialization, and even in tourism. Second, agriculture is an infinite resource that, if harnessed right, has the potential to support all these countries' plans for decades to come. Allow me to put this into perspective. About 6 to 7 years ago, it was confirmed that Uganda had worth 3.5 billion barrels of oil, which represented a big find for Uganda, and which was opined to be able to supply our oil needs for up to 30 years. The fact, though, is that 3.5 million barrels will not transform Uganda into an oil economy, as is the case of Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, or Iran, who have reserves in the hundreds of billions of barrels. The reserves are nonetheless large enough to deeply affect the future of our country and economy. It will be up to all of us to decide whether that effect will be positive or negative. So what does this mean? One, even though we're excited about oil, and oil does have its significant benefits for us as a country, oil is finite. Our reserves will not run forever. Secondly, the discovery of oil has been the biggest news for this country since the 2000s, but agriculture has been with us since even before the world wars, and will continue to be with us even after the oil reserves have run out. And lastly, if oil will last 30 years, and agriculture will be with us all the time, then we must strategically position agriculture to benefit the most from the big push that oil will give us in boosting economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, agriculture is therefore Uganda's infinite oil well, and we all need to start treating it as such. And many may claim they do, but if we all did, then we would prioritize the restoration of our forest cover, would ensure proper drainage and waste treatment, and would protect our water reserves and adopt clean energy initiatives that create the right environment for our agriculture ecosystem to thrive. But also, ladies and gentlemen, this is the reason that the cluster question becomes very relevant to answer. So, how do we boost competitiveness through production, productivity, and agro-based manufacturing? NDP2 emphasizes commercialization of agriculture, value addition to agriculture products, and agro-processing. The amount of time spent and research done into understanding and strategizing for the agriculture sector in Uganda and all these areas of emphasis is a lot, and much more than sufficient to guide on the challenges and opportunities in the sector. In addition, there already exists substantive number of strategic interventions like Operation Wealth Creation, Credit Guarantee Scheme in Bank of Uganda, capital financing by Uganda Development Bank, agriculture insurance, and many, many, many more, as well as strategic partners or partnerships like USAID, ABI Trust, and others, trying to resolve the challenges identified during various researches, workshops, reviews, and conferences. So as a cluster, we asked ourselves, what then will be different? In other words, what can we propose that will be significantly different from what has already been suggested? And we came up with 3 solutions. The first solution would be to focus on agriculture or the sector as 2 distinct subsectors. And these are subsistence agriculture and commercial agriculture. And once we have done that, we need to bucket our interventions, research, and resources accordingly. The main difference is that subsistence agriculture by its nature is not primarily income-focused, while commercial agriculture is. What is common about subsistence farmers in Uganda is that these consist mainly of peasant and small-holding farmers, whose produce is primarily for home consumption. These farmers are not unknown to sell the surplus in markets with and around their geographical locations, but this is done as an afterthought. In many cases, the subsistence farmer will, for instance, simply pour milk away if it's gone bad or unconsumed because there'll be more tomorrow, or share a bumper crop with a neighbor in exchange for something they don't have in some sort of barter trade. Commercial agriculture, on the other hand, consists of both small and large farmers and agro-processors, whose primary intent is actively trade in their produce with a view to extending geographical boundaries where it makes business sense. A further breakdown of the commercial agriculture subsector will reveal individuals who are primarily focused on local and international export sales. And why should we break down the sector? It is essential in determining which intervention is applicable to which sector and what will keep the players in the sector incentivized and provide clarity in the measures of success for each. The overarching goal, nevertheless, is that by deliberately breaking down the sector and formalizing this discussion, NDP2's emphasis on commercializing agriculture can be focused on without the fear that subsistence agriculture has been forgotten, because that sector has a role it plays too in Vision 2040. But it certainly does not need to be focused on in as much detail for productivity, competitiveness, and agro-manufacturing. And as such, having shown this distinction, this presentation will now focus on 2 other solutions for commercial agriculture. Do we understand the agriculture sector environment and the value chains that exist especially for commercial agriculture? On this slide, we present the framework for commercial agriculture, and this will apply to all areas of commercial agriculture, whether it's to do with crops or livestock. What we propose is that government policies must be looked at in light of the entire value chain in which they operate. And because there are so many value chains out there, government should identify maybe 5 established or near established value chains that have the potential to transform its competitiveness at both a local and international scale. We propose the value chains to be considered be those that provide an opportunity for government and private sector collaboration and predominantly rely on local content, for example, by involving a critical cash crop like commercialized coffee agriculture, or combine the use of several food crops like is done in the alcoholic beverages industry. The value chains for these need to be analyzed and then support provided through targeted extension services. So in simple terms, we need to select a commodity, select the farmers, and then select the necessary extension services. If government can provide this basic support to the elements, the rest will automatically fall in place, especially where there is guaranteed market. Just for illustration, let's look at the Uganda Breweries framework. Its value chain, as illustrated here, starts with the local commercial farmer and involves a number of players, including transporters, agencies, the tax authorities, and distribution partners, to mention a few. Currently, Uganda Breweries invests in this value chain because it must guarantee raw material supplies in order to produce its products. The proposal would involve government taking over a part of this value chain that involves commercial farmers who grow crops like barley, sorghum, maize, cassava, and providing, for example, extension services to these farmers, which would free up Uganda Breweries' current spend in that area to drive more consumption so that there is more demand for the grain. Another example would be that Narrow, for example, could research into better seed varieties and provide these to the farmers so that the cost of seed is reduced and both Uganda Breweries and the farmer can agree on a better margin for the farmer. Government may also subsequently opt to invest in training for post-harvest handling so that the farmers are able to maintain the integrity of their yield and sell the quality of seed required by the agro manufacturer. If one were to look at a cash crop like, say, coffee, and look deeply into their value chain, government could identify and create a database for all commercial farmers and then give these registered farmers access to certain credit facilities based on their potential. Or better yet, government and the private sector could identify 5 of the coffee farmers with the most potential to sustainably supply our international markets and support them to gain access to agriculture credit financing held in BOU, and also support them in securing the market through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the embassies abroad. In exchange, these identified commercial farmers would ensure the right quality and quantity is produced consistently and can act as influencers on the other coffee growers around them. The beauty in adopting models like this is that once they've been proven to work, the farmers in and around these farmers will also indirectly benefit. And in each financial year, government has the opportunity to review the progress or success achieved within the environment. Critical to note is that the agricultural value chain does not operate on its own, but operates as a whole economy, as you can see from the Uganda Breweries' full value chain. It is in understanding the value chain, the investment opportunities, and the impact that the necessary push and pull that is summed up as competitiveness comes to life. The third solution speaks for itself. 2 players need to come together to create a culture of accountability. And how will they do this? The private sector needs to demand accountability at a post-forum engagement for government and its development partners to share their goals and achievements. So many bodies, development partners, and government departments work through the year on this sector. But what is each doing? How much is each spending? And what is the deliverable for all? If they come together at one forum, can we realign them to service each cluster in a more effective way? The private sector also needs to actively participate in the budget cycle and carry a voice or influence in the national budgeting framework discussion. The private sector should be interested when the Ministry of Agriculture is presenting its accountability for the financial year and its budget for the next year. And lastly, they should continuously and consciously commit to work with government to support the interventions, for example, in sharing value chains and opportunities for government intervention. Government, on the other hand, needs to unbundle the number. What do I mean by this? What is in the budget allocation and how much of it is spent on administrative costs and how much is spent on actual implementation of strategies and initiatives? How much is going towards subsistence agriculture and how much is going towards commercial agriculture? They also need to urgently review administrative structures so as to remove duplication and improve effectiveness. Is the Ministry of Agriculture and its semi-autonomous bodies structured right to support the two subsectors? Or are they structured to support subsistence agriculture alone? And is there something that needs to be changed here? What is working and what is not for the sector that they're targeting? So the question we've asked ourselves, and you must all be asking yourselves, is what is going to be different? And the answer that we are giving is execution and accountability. What is your answer? I thank you.